And we have our guest already in studio with us, of course, to discuss this and a raft of other issues as well. Allow me to introduce to you, I'd introduce some of them as we began the program. But joining us this morning, we have Richard Onyonka, who is a member of Parliament, Kitutu Chache. Also, we do have with us Senator Isaac Mwaura, who is nominated as Senator. Also, we do have with us David Makali, who is the Managing Editor of The Star. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Debarl.
Right, good to see you, and happy felicitations again for the new year.
Yes.
We said this earlier, but at least David wasn't here, so I get to say happy new year to you as well.
Happy New Year.
It's true.
Good.
Happy to see you.
Thank you. I'm happy to see you, by the way.
From last year.
Yeah, last year, since actually you won the election again, we've never met, and I want to congratulate you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, let's just begin with what we've seen as far as the cabinet appointment is concerned, and of course the swearing in of Raila Odinga, which will be happening at the end of this month. First of all, we can begin with the cabinet secretaries. We are wondering, what is the rhyme and reason, or maybe the premise that the president used to actually, and the wisdom that the partial appointment of this cabinet secretary is predicated on? Let's begin with you, Richard.
I think for me, I read the appointment of the partial appointment of the cabinet as being based on very simple premise.
Yes.
Premise number one is that actually the president just decided that he's going to appoint 6 people for now, because either he has not done the due diligence, he hasn't put the list that he wants to appoint through, you have to go through the National Intelligence System, you have to go through CRB, you have to go through all these structures which have been put into place to make sure that when the name comes into Parliament for vetting, then you find that the president will not have any embarrassments. In other words, so that the candidates that he brings will actually be passed. That is the simplistic and the very easy way I would look at it. The second one is, it is true, like the media has said, there's a likelihood that the president had not conclusively agreed with Deputy President Ruto on what the list was going to be. I've seen in the paper, there are some people saying that it's much ado about nothing. The Deputy President, after all, doesn't appoint cabinet members or CSs. The truth is, if you look at the past appointment in 2014,
yes,
the DP was there. The discussions were being held by the two individuals, or the parties of the two individuals. The consultations were very animated, and there were issues for us, because we are always observing and monitoring what's going on. There were issues raised that there is a possibility at that time, I'm talking about 2014, that in fact the DP was saying, I would want to take finance and defense and all that, but finally they agreed amicably and the cabinet was appointed. So this time around, the argument which is out here, and for us, this is going to be pure speculation on my part. I don't have any concrete evidence, but politically, the way I look at it, there's a likelihood, actually, as the press is saying, and if you look at everybody in the media is talking about, is there is a disagreement as to who the deputy president wanted to be in the cabinet, and there is disagreement as to who the president himself wants. You see, the conflict of interest that you have right now,
yes,
is that the president is talking about his legacy. The president is looking at his legacy now and for the future. The deputy president is looking at his succession. He is looking at the people he wants to put into the cabinet who are going to work, so that by the time we get to 2020, for example, you'll find that President Uhuru will be what you call a lame duck president. He wouldn't have much to do, and it is actually DP who will be running the government, and all the ministers appointed by him will then be actually serving him. He will be preparing himself for 2022. The third observation some of us are making out here is that there is a very heated and convoluted argument between some members of the Kenyan political elite who feel that actually what the president needs to do is forget about the succession of 2022, but come up with a cabinet that is going to, one, have a face of Kenya, that is going to be constitutionally acceptable by bringing in a number of women cabinet members, even when some of them may have been left out, and make sure that he goes outside his political village or outside his political house, and that is Jubilee. That in fact there is need for the president to begin to think. It has been done by President Moi. If you look at his appointments before, it was done during the coalition government where there was this President Kibaki decided and agreed to a large extent. Some of the people that joined cabinet, President Kibaki never really agreed with them. But he allowed Raila, even though that was a legally drafted agreement or a document which allowed him to do that. But again, for Kibaki to have agreed for that to take place, it means that Kibaki realized that he needed to bring the country together, that he needed to allow a spread out of the distribution of the cabinet post to make Kenya look, or to make his cabinet look inclusive, therefore to make Kenya move forward as a country after 2007. And I think those three are the possibilities that I look at.
Right, but picking on your first point that yes, there's a disagreement between the president and the deputy president.
Yes.
We can see what is actually on the front pages of the dailies today.
Yes.
That, yeah, he's stoutly denying this, that, yeah, there is no friction, there is actually harmony, and of course it's the prerogative of the president on appointing the cabinet secretaries. Let's hold on to that. Let's hear from Isaac Mwaura.
Yeah, I think, yes, that is exactly the position of Jubilee, that, you know, people are speculating too much. I just want to take you back when we held our first PG meeting at State House for Jubilee, when we were assigning who will be our nominees for various chairmanships and vice chairmanships, and of course, our membership to both the Senate and the National Assembly. And the deputy president was not there. So you are going to increasingly see a situation where the president himself is making certain pronouncements without the deputy president. So it is not really out of context. I think people are just speculating. I mean, there's a lot of conjecture, and it's unnecessary. Because as we go forward, Jubilee has put in place a very robust agenda, the 4-point agenda: healthcare, food, security, housing, you know, and manufacturing. So you need men and women who would actually be able to help the president secure his legacy. And of course, I mean, if you look at the cabinet secretaries, what the president has done is basically the same way. If you remember President Kibaki, he did that in 2008, where he appointed 17 cabinet ministers. I think they were called cabinet ministers then. And then he waited for the other. And you can see, for example, I mean, consultations have been going on. They will still continue. You know, there's something, Debarl, that people need to understand, that, I mean, there is a very tough balancing act that the president needs to make. And for Jubilee, the issue is to give the opportunity to those who there is no contestation. I mean, if you look at tourism, Najib Balala has done very well. If you look at infrastructure, apart from the road carnage that has been witnessed of late, but then in terms of infrastructural projects, Mr. James Macharia has delivered. Joe Moshero, in terms of the internet connectivity, in terms of even the fastitudinous in which exams have been marked. So you can go on and on and say, it's not that those who have been are yet to be named are not performers, but then you go to look at the regions. I mean, for example, when we were you know, having the parliamentary nominees for various chairmanships and vice chairmanships, it was agreed that that same consideration would affect how cabinet was going to be constituted, because then it's about regions. It's about, I mean, which position goes to what area. So you are likely to see, for example, you know, regions where they got very powerful cabinet positions, parliamentary chairmanships, that will of course affect whether they are going to get certain slots in cabinet. So really it's not easy. The country is looking, and we are not just looking at the Jubilee of 2013, which was a coalition between TNA and URP. We are looking at Jubilee that is more expanded, a Jubilee that almost has a super majority in the parliament, and that is spread across the country. So really, by the end of the day, you want to ensure that you bring on board, you know, the face of Kenya. You want to ensure that you are not accused, for example, of only having certain communities and leaving out others. And in the spirit of the unity of this country, I think that is why the president is taking his time. to ensure that he submits to Parliament a cabinet that will, of course, ensure that is the case. And in that case, Debarl, I would also want to say that as persons with disabilities, we would also want to see a cabinet minister with disability. I mean, we are very happy that we have a PS as at now, Joseph Tamukhove, but we also would be very glad to see a cabinet secretary with disability.
All right, David, do you think this was a rather premature announcement from the president? Why wouldn't he have waited for maybe the next 2 weeks to announce a whole cabinet? Instead of announcing the two, then of course we are left speculating and people wondering why others are being retained and others, have they been sacked, so to speak?
First of all, I think Debarl, to say premature is a bit understated, because it's quite a few months since we had the elections. And since the president knew he's going to be president of the country, for him to really come with a list that is not full, so to speak, of all the cabinet positions, you know, smacks of what I would call indecision. And if it's not indecision, of course, the job of constituting the cabinet is not easy. He has to strike a balance between all these factors he has to consider, which is, you know, merit, which he has promised the country. He wants sufficient people with integrity. He also needs to strike a balance to achieve the face of the nation. And he has to other things to grapple with, including rewarding people he has promised jobs during the campaign. And there are quite a few people who are told to either step down or offered certain incentives in order to, you know, to join Jubilee. So it's quite a tough balancing act. But to say that, you know, I mean, this late in the day, that he should come and give the country a half list, so to speak, is a bit disappointing, because I think the country needs to move forward, and he has been on the front line saying we need to move forward. How do we move forward if we are first of all not constituting your cabinet and forming government, so that speculation and all these contestations can end, and then people can begin focusing on the whole business of building the nation? So I think it's a bit disappointing looking at it from that perspective. But on as to what could be transpiring or what might have led to the half list, yes. I mean, of course, you saw what the DP yesterday responded with. But he had been quiet for 6 days, not speaking. And we know him to be a regular Twitter, you know, to have a high Twitter presence. So when, you know, speculation goes out like that, and you're not responding or respond belatedly, obviously there's something that has stung him. And I think the stories which have been published the last couple of days are spot on as to what is happening within government. I mean, we who are in the media and the business of gathering information, news and so forth, of course, get to hear a lot of things which are happening in the corridors of power. And it's clear that the composition of this cabinet is presenting quite a bit of a challenge between the president and the deputy as to who should be on that list. And we have names, of course, which have gone out. Of course, they'll be disputed. And it's expected that they'll dispute because the list is not from them. And nor will they confirm lists which are appearing until they are published. And as you can see, the list that came out, the first list of the cabinet that was published, it was almost 70% what the media had been expecting. So why would anyone refute what else is being said is coming? So I expect that there will be very few surprises in the cabinet that the president will appoint, even though clearly they're holding it very close to their in confidence. But we expect that some of the names that have been dropped by the media, the fury notwithstanding, will still feature in the final list. But finally, let me just say that I think the idea of having half the cabinet announced could be to answer to two things. One, the president could be testing, you know, to see testing by the ear, put out the ones he thinks could be less controversial, or the ones that would have, you know, better or greater public approval, and see what goes out. How is the public going to respond? And then from that, build on. Either, you know, and I don't think that the list of those who didn't make it, the 13 cabinet secretaries, you know, some could make a comeback. I hold the view that, you know, this is a piecemeal testing system where you put out some names and see how the public responds, and then, you know, people begin to lobby, and then eventually you accommodate some more people and keep going. Now, that's not very good politics, because it keeps the country in this turbulent, speculative mode, which I would, you know, want us to move out and move forward.
But we've seen on matters of public appearances, the two They have been like two peas in a pod, appearing together when, of course, when they are making the first pronouncement with the cabinet appointment, when they just came into the administration, of course, we saw them together. And we are given to understand with the information coming to hand as well, that even the deputy president was not really aware about this particular list. So this really came from the left side for the president.
I don't hold that view at all, Debarl. The president and the deputy president had an engagement. And as far as we can tell, we stand to be corrected, the deputy president was around. He was in office. He was in town. And, you know, some of these things are not just done like that. I mean, they would have agreed, you go ahead and do it. I'm okay with it. You know, so that he does not appear to be lending his approval to something that he has reservations about. And as we know, there were quite a few things that, you know, the deputy president may not have agreed with regard to that list. So probably, as he has said, we should sit back and wait and see them patch up. And the patching up could mean concessions in the list that will finally be unveiled, including some people he wanted on or did not want on, either being on the list or being off that list.
So there were reservations, and of course with the deputy president himself.
There's definitely friction about this cabinet composition. There's no doubt about it. Let's be honest, and that's not abnormal. I mean, where the DP and the president ought to know that, you know, that ought to happen, and us in the public domain or in the media are at liberty to offer what we see happening to the public.
So the splash we're having on the front page of a Star and the splash we're having on the front page of a Daily Nation, this is purely a public relations exercise from the deputy president. There is a rift, so to speak.
I think for me, if you look at normally, Debarl, when you people in the media are bringing out a story about a political issue, the truth is there is always some smoke, and therefore there is presumably some fire. And I want to say the way David has just raised the issue, the truth is, if you look at what has happened in the last 6 or 7 days, Kenyans had expected that the president would actually have come and said the total number of people that have appointed are so and so and so and so, and the few that we've not will continue because we have to get this exercise rolling. But the truth, in the public limelight right now, when you look at the way people are reacting to what is happening, the feeling out there is that it's true. The DP and the president have disagreed on who their cabinet appointees are going to be. The exercise actually looks confused for the simple reason that you have, even in the appointments of the people that the president has appointed, he has not even included the women. And you know, legally, according to the constitution, he needs to you take over the matter of gender and include a number of women into his cabinet appointments. So he's left everybody guessing. He has left the country guessing. But as David Makali has said, he has just left the country again in a mode where people are just either speculating, people are wondering what is happening. And I think for me, the worry that I have is that look at the family members of the cabinet members who have, quote unquote, been fired. Their members are worried. I mean, the truth is these people had jobs within the Jubilee government. Now, the president has just picked 6 out of the 18, and those 6 are all of them at home. Then yesterday, an announcement comes saying, no, the president is saying you hold on to your positions. In fact, you can even be going to your offices as you await the next course of action. That creates a feeling of to me, neglect, a feeling of disorganization. Like Makali has said, the president needed to have done this a little bit better.
All right, we have Minority Leader in the National Assembly, John Mbadi, who is faulting the president, saying that by only retaining 6 of the 19 cabinet secretaries, he was admitting that he has been relying on incompetent men and women to run the country. Isaac?
I don't think so. I mean, really, that's a very ridiculous way of looking at things, because you serve at the pleasure of the president. I mean, ideally, the president should be the one running the government alone, but of course you cannot do that. So when you are appointed in cabinet, then it is, you are being told, I mean, help me in executing the mandate I have from Kenyans. And I mean, really, it's a good assembly. Obviously, I think, Debarl, we will have to agree at some point that some of these cabinet secretaries have not lived up to the expectations. We've had a situation where You know, you look at people, it's like they are clueless, they don't know what is happening, you don't know, and that is the truth. However, I mean, that is normal because these people have been given a chance to serve, and the president has got the power. It is within his mandate to assess and say, who is it that I'm going to continue with? And by the way, sometimes it doesn't even mean that you've not been performing. That's something I have come to learn and appreciate in politics. That sometimes the best don't ever end up doing so, because you have a situation where you have to balance regional issues. And you may want to pick somebody who may not necessarily be an A performer, but then he or she fulfills certain other criterion that is equally as equally as important. So for John Mbadi to say that it is a confession that the Jubilee government has not been performing is not true, because what then do you have to say about those who have been retained? And I think let us just say this, and this is my personal view, that sometimes we are giving too much credence to political positions. I don't think having a cabinet secretary from your area will add some plate of ugali on your table. We have the political positions in this country are highly overrated, so much so that we can bring the country to a halt for political contestations, and yet in actual sense, what drives the country, what makes people to get opportunities, business. It's about the growing of the economy. It's about people getting opportunities to earn a living. And yet, you may argue and say that then, of course, political, leadership so provides such an environment. True, and we have to do it only up to a certain extent, in my opinion. But beyond that, I think we must not overrate that which is not supposed to be the case, because right now, then, after this, you still hear people saying, oh, even after the president has fully constituted the cabinet, so and so was left out and what have you. And by the way, just even to try to answer your question earlier, I mean, if you look at people who have been appointed, you cannot say that they only belong to the President Uhuru side within Jubilee. Jubilee is one party. I mean, you have Chache, you have Rotich, you have, so the issue is not just a question of saying that you are apportioning certain, orientation of this list as to, I believe, and if there is a relationship that you can count on, Debarl, is a relationship of His Excellency the President and the Deputy President, and that is what has held this country together.
All right. When we, of course, continue with this discussion, David Makali, some of the issues say to have instanced, of course, the Deputy President is talk that his political nemesis from Rift Valley, Baringo Senator Gideon Moi, the man sharpening his knife to take him on the 2022 presidential race, could make it to the cabinet, or at least his allies as well. So this could be also some of the things maybe that's really incensed the president as well. So
it's true. I think it's true that the ascendancy, so to speak, of Gideon Moi and his how he's strategizing to get a stake in this government. Remember also Kanu supported Uhuru, and they supported Uhuru directly, despite their disagreement or dislike of the deputy president. And they want to harvest, they want reward for what they did. And Gideon, I think, is straight trying to get as much as he can from this administration. And the likelihood is he's going to get quite a bit. I see him getting 2 to 3 ministries, which is going to cause a bit of to ruffle the feathers of the deputy president.
Just hold on to that. We'll continue with that. We want to see what is happening also internationally. Of course, you're watching AM Live. This is a point. Of course, when we circle back, we'll continue with that particular discussion with the panelists here this morning. But up next is the international news.